Hey there, it is Tom Sawyer on the behalf of Indie Structural Productions once again. And we're back with another Scum build video. This time around we're going to be going through the Fretwork. So, first things first, making sure the neck is actually straight. So just get yourself a nice straight edge to check if your neck is straight, and then adjust the truss rod accordingly. A very good way of doing this is also using a notched straight edge, so that way you'll be able to see if your actual fretboard is straight instead of looking at your frets that haven't been leveled yet. So, moving on to masking. A very nifty little trick to do is to mask off the side of the fretboard first, so that when you're removing the masking tape, you can just pull on this and it'll basically lift off all the masking on the frets, like fretboard I mean. And then just very straightforward masking off the fretboard and making sure that I'm all the way up to the fret, and yeah, a good trick is to use your fingernail to kind of run along the fret to make sure that you burnish all the way down. Two layers of masking tape alongside the fret on each side is more than enough, just because that will protect the fretboard very well. Putting anything more than that and you won't be able to reach all the way down on the fret, which means that your crowning will be that little bit more difficult. And then use a scalpel blade to remove all the excess tape. The best way to do that is run alongside, or run the blade right alongside the fret. At about like 45 degrees. Now once that tedious part is done, it's time to level everything out. So first, a part there that you missed was basically I used the Sharpie to draw on every fret. This shows me where the frets are level and where I need to apply a little bit more. Well, where I need to sand a bit more. So I'm just using a leveling beam with 320 or 240, something like that. 320 more than likely. And you don't need to do much. If you've done your fret work well enough, you don't need to do too much. A couple of passes here and there and you should be just fine. Then the fall away, I do so that I have a couple of layers of tape on the 12th fret and then tape on half of my leveling beam. This then creates a sort of incline to sand against. And as always, I'm letting the sandpaper do most of the work. I'm not applying any pressure because if I apply pressure to the neck is going to bend, which means that my leveling job will not be accurate. So if you just let the sandpaper do all the work, you ensure that the neck stays straight. And then periodically make sure that there's no rocking by using fret rocker. So keep checking that your fretwork actually is level. And if you do find a rock somewhere, just go ahead and work on that one fret just a little bit more. Now with that all done, it's back to sharpening. This is by far the easiest way to track your consistency with every fret, because you'll be able to kind of compare between previous frets of how much Sharpie there is left over. Now this is a bit of a poor angle, but with fret crowning, what you're essentially doing is you have this sort of file with 3 sides to it, and holding it at a little bit of an angle, and on both sides of the fret just filing down to make that Sharpie line as thin as possible. This means that you're bringing in the sides of the fret toward the middle, so your intonation point is becoming smaller. Because if you have a flat fret, that means all the way along that length of that flat area is your intonation point, which means that the pitch of what you're playing will either be sharp or flat. So if you bring that intonation point straight to the middle of the fret, that means that you're perfectly intonated. If you have a fairly good file, a single cut, really nice file will go a long ways when doing this sort of job. I'm not even using my file, I'm using Tom's file because it's infinitely better than mine. And then doing the fret ends. Basically the best way to go about this is getting all the way down to the bottom of the fret, and from both sides, just a couple of strokes. And a good way to do it is kind of roll into it. So you're rounding over that end of the fret, getting rid of any sharp edges. I'm just doing this basically at 45 degrees, a couple of strokes, 1, 2, 1, 2 on each side. to make the fret ends look a little nicer, you can just add a little bit of roll, so rolling in. And then going about with some 400 grit wet and dry paper to get rid of file marks and smooth everything out a little bit. If the 400 grit isn't really doing the job all that well, you can go 320, 400, or 240, 320, 400. Depends on how deep your scratches are. But because I leveled my frets with a leveling beam at 320, there are very little scratches to work with. Of course, if you're using a leveling file, there will be file marks that you need to sand away, and that's a little bit of a pain. But going from sandpaper to sandpaper, there isn't much to get rid of, which means I'm not altering all my work. Well, I'm not altering the frets all that much. I'm just getting rid of scratches. And then on to polishing. So for this, if you do have a polishing or a if you do have a polishing wheel, buffing wheel, there we go. Use that. You can do this by hand. You can do this with a small Dremel with a buffing wheel attachment, but because I had access to one, of course I'm gonna go ahead and use it. So first things first, using 2 wheels for this. So with the first wheel, using whatever grit of polishing compound that was, moving along very slowly. The main thing is keeping the guitar moving at all times, because I don't want to build up any heat on any of the frets, because that means that it might dislodge the fret somewhat, and I don't want to do that. And keeping the guitar moving all the time. You have to be very careful. You have to have a good solid grip, because buffing wheels are a menace. They will rip the guitar out of your hand if you're not careful. So trying to avoid nicking the edge of the fretboard as much as possible. You can't see it here, but I'm holding the guitar at an angle, so the buffing wheel can't really grab onto the edge at all. There we go. With all the frets done, I move on to the second wheel. A smaller wheel and a much higher grit polishing compound. To get that lovely final polish. One of those things where it's like, this machine is absolutely frightening for the size of it. It looks perfectly fine and normal, but it is terrifying. So respect your machinery, and they won't bite you. In other words, look at that mirror shine with 0 to very little effort whatsoever. Lovely. And then it's time to remove all the masking tape. And of course I'm forgetting to peel away the green tape there to help this along. I will get there. It'll take me a while to remember to actually do that. But anywho, this is starting to reach the end of the video. So I would once again like to thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video. I will be back again next week with a new one. So hit that like button, subscribe to see more, comment down below if you have anything to comment on, and yeah, see you guys.